Well, hello everyone. Today we're going to be doing something that I haven't done in quite some time, and that's replace a motherboard. This down here is a Dell XPS 8300 from early 2012. Now, a lot of you by this point are probably thinking, does Dell sponsor this guy? And the answer is no. This is a very high-end, well, high-end's kind of an arbitrary term, but this is a very well-equipped computer. It was for 2012, and it still is now. It's got a Core i7 Sandy Bridge, clocked at 3 gigahertz. It's got a very nice NVIDIA graphics card. I forget the model, but it's even better. Even though it's several years old now, it's still better than the one that came with my new Inspiron. Of course, it is an Intel, and mine's a switchable Radeon, so of course it's going to be the case. But I mean, it is a very nice graphics card, and really drives that display that came with it quite well. 8 gigs of RAM and a whole bunch of other things, gigabit Ethernet, you know. It has the works, and probably the nicest computer my family's ever owned, but it has some problems going on in it. Several months ago, the computer would randomly turn off without blue screening, and the little power indicator on the top would start flashing amber. And also, at one point, one of the user accounts on the computer, it's running Windows 7 by the way, just randomly disappeared, and I thought, well, it seems like the hard drive might be failing if stuff is getting corrupted, and it's randomly shutting off without any good reason. I thought it was a bad hard drive, and so I replaced the hard drive in it. But now we're getting similar problems, similar issues, and in addition to that, the network card, well, not the network card, because the network's actually on the motherboard itself, but it keeps dropping the DHCP address, and so the internet will stop working on there like every hour or so. But the more odd problem that kind of tipped me off to, well, it must be the motherboard, was the computer loses time, and not, you know, anything it's not in a pattern. It just goes back in time in random amounts, and it happens instantaneously. So for instance, right now it's 1:35 there or about, and it might jump back to like 12:20, like some random time in the past, and it just keeps going back and back and back. And at first I thought that you know, it was a problem caused by Windows Time, so I disabled Windows Time service, and it kept happening. I thought, well, maybe malware is doing it, but that's not the case, because what happened is one day I decided to turn on the computer, set the time correctly in the BIOS, then I turned the computer immediately off without booting into Windows. I then proceeded to turn the computer on and boot into the BIOS again several hours later, and it had lost time, even when the computer was not on. And of course it's plugged in, so the BIOS battery would be irrelevant. That's not the problem. It's the motherboard. It just isn't keeping time, and there's a bunch of other problems happening on it. Not sure what's wrong, but I think that motherboard failure on this line of computers is relatively common. So we're going to have to replace the motherboard today, and we already have the motherboard in. It's currently in this nice anti-static bag, and I got some thermal paste. So, without further ado, let's do it. Also, I should warn you, I don't have a tripod that fits this camera, so this is going to be more of a I did it and see the after shots, and not so much of me doing it. But I'll try to film what I can. So let's take this out. It's going to be a pain. Let's do it. So here we are. Pull out the screw. Put it there. See if we can pop this off one-handed. Got it. It was actually a two-handed operation. XPS. Very nice. And there we have our innards. And this is going to be a fun operation. Look at all that. It's got wires going everywhere. So it's pretty dusty in there. Alright, I'm going to disconnect everything and put on some gloves, get a screwdriver, and we'll see what we can do. Alright, so I had to take this off here because this graphics card is going to have to come out, and in order to take that out you have to remove this, which holds all the expansion cards in. So this is going to have to get pulled out. Other things that are going to have to get pulled out: you're going to have to remove a bunch of the connectors for fans. We got this fan here, they're both attached to the motherboard via some headers. You're going to have to take out the USB headers down here. I already pulled out the SATA cables for the hard drive and the optical drive. You're going to have to take the RAM out. You don't want to leave that in there. This fan, the heatsink, and the processor all have to come out, and you have to reuse those. The Wi-Fi card here, the man, that's a tongue twister, WLAN, that card's going to have to come out and be replaced. I think that's pretty much it. We also have some other connectors for the power supply. You're going to have to unplug those as well. And that should be just about it. I think I'm going to have to remove the hard drive as well as this fan in order to actually pull the board out, because they're going to be in the way. So that's going to be fun. So I'm going to do that, and I'll see you in just a second. See, Dell learned their lesson this time. This actually unscrews. Look at that, actual screws, instead of a locking mechanism that is pretty much guaranteed to break, like some of the older ones. But there's our processor, and we'll take that nice i7 out of there, and that'll be the final thing to take out. You can see I've already taken out the hard drive and that fan, so we'll be all good to go. After this, just gotta unscrew some screws and we'll be all set to put the new one in. Got everything out except these two screws. They just will not come out because they're not placed in a very accessible location. So my idea is, well, I tried a rubber band already, but it's not that they're stripped, it's just that they're like stuck. So I found another screwdriver that's a little more appropriately sized and a little shorter than the one I've been using. So hopefully that'll allow me to get those out. But everything else went so smoothly up until these two screws. So let's hope I can get those out okay. Finally got them. It was this short little guy that did the trick. So now, haha, now we still got a clip in there, don't we? Alright, that looks like I have to remove that, and there we go. She's dislodged. Now I can take her out, put the new one in. Alright, the new board is in. Reapplied the processor as well as the thermal paste. Put this fan back in, got the RAM in, and all has gone well. Everything matches up perfectly. No problems thus far. So I'm very happy about that. Forgot to mention earlier, see this green USB header? Plugs in there. On the computer we got it originally, this was actually unplugged from here. And so on the front, there's this drop-down case. It has a spot for something. It's not a floppy drive, it's some other expansion drive. It also has these two USB ports, and they never worked. And I always wondered why. As it turns out, it's because this was unplugged from the factory. So that problem was also solved today. Two birds with one stone. Thumbs up. Alright, well, idiot me forgot to record the first boot, but basically what happened is it came up with the DHCP prompt. It was trying to boot off the network is what was happening. So in order to fix that, you have to go into the BIOS and rearrange the boot order. Set the hard drive to be the first in the boot sequence. Pretty easy on a machine. This machine is aged enough that it's from the era before the secure boot nonsense that a lot of computers have today. So it's pretty easy to do. You just hit the on button and hit F2, spam F2, and eventually you'll get into the BIOS for those of you who don't know. And you just change the boot order. Not very difficult. Also set the time allow is in there, and it's been a while now I figured I'd wait just to see if it's held time. On average, this thing would lose random increments of time as early as 20 minutes. 20 minutes would go by and the clock would be messed up, and it's been longer than that now, so let's see if it's holding time. See what we get here. Go back into the BIOS. Alright. Yep, that's correct. 1038. Alright. So, let's get out of there. And moment of truth. I already know what's going to happen. But, spoiler alert. Yep, there we go. We are starting Windows. So, that's how you replace a Dell motherboard. Not the best tutorial in the world, but figured some of you would want to see it. So yay. Thank you for watching.